here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and now we have our 4 completed Swerve modules. We are ready to start building the frame members that's going to go in between them to connect them together. So we're going to be cutting a lot of this 1x2 pre-drilled box to attach everything together. We're going to get started with that in a second, but before we do, let's give another special thanks to Argosy, First, Cross the Road Electronics, West Coast Products, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School for hosting our studio. All right, we're going to get started cutting this. The first thing I want to mention, though, is it looks like we can fit all of the pieces we need on these 3 sticks here. So you might want to get 4, so you have a little bit extra. It does fit a little bit close, and especially if you need a long piece. The other thing is, you'll notice as we're working, I kind of have the wrong material here. So mine is, this wall thickness is 1/16 of an inch. And we recommend that you use the 1/8 wall thickness. So don't get what I'm using. This just happens to be what we had around. The outside is the same. It looks the same once we're working on it. It's just that wall thickness is a little bit thinner. For like main frame chassis pieces, it's definitely nice to have that extra thickness because they're going to be robots. If you're playing defense or robots are playing defense on you, there's going to be a lot of collisions, and that thicker wall is going to do a lot in order to keep that robot like robust and not bent or broken. So just keep that in mind. We're going to be using the wrong stuff here because that's what we have, and we want to get this video done and get it out as soon as possible. Make sure you get the 1/8 of an inch wall thickness, or there might be some 0.09, which is sort of in between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch. That's probably okay, but I would go all the way to an 1/8 of an inch if you haven't already ordered. Okay, we need to do a bunch of cuts on these. The next thing on this material is, set these ones down, is the hole position matters. So at some point, if we're going to take another bracket and we're going to attach like an L bracket or something on here, which is something we're going to do, the distance between where these 2 pieces come together, right? So if we have 2 of these coming together to make an L shape like this, the distance between these 2 holes is pretty critical. So if we leave too much space here, it will not be able to line up. If we cut a little bit too much off of here, that would be okay because it would still line up with the holes. We just have a small gap in between the pieces. So in general, when we're doing this, you can be a little bit shorter than the dimensions we're trying to do. But if you're longer than the dimensions, in most places, that's going to cause you some problems. There are some places where we want from the edge of the hole to the end of the piece to be a 1/2 inch. That's anywhere where pieces are going to join together like this. Or if we're going to overlap, which we do in one place, and we want it to kind of end up flat on the back. Then there are some places like the Swerve modules where we need the end of the piece to not stick into the area where the wheel has to rotate. So we're going to cut those a little closer. With any of these cuts, with any of those cuts, again, as long as you have enough wall around the last hole, you're going to be kind of okay. So everything, try not to be longer. You can be a little bit shorter if you have to, but obviously the best is being exactly the right dimension. All right, so I'm going to use our cut guide. We have a tube cut guide here that shows 3 different tube lengths and shows a bunch of cuts for all of our different parts on there. And so we're going to follow that guide in order to just maximize the size of stuff, right? So our first one, it looks like we have 28 inches, and then 15.5 inches, and then finally, on the very end, a 2-inch piece. What we're doing is we have the 2-inch piece on the end because the 2-inch piece is going to have one of these 1/2-inch sections, and it's nice if one of the 1/2-inch sections is perfect because there's going to be another piece that lines up with that. So we basically said, hey, let's use the end, the factory edges, in the places where it is the most likely to help us. So same thing on the other side of this piece. We're doing a 28-inch piece. That's going across the entire frame of the robot. It's going on the inside of the 2 outside side frame rails. So we want that piece to be exactly 28. And that means it's going to go 1/2 inch past the holes on one side and 1/2 inch past the holes on the other side. So by using the factory edge, we're going to be able to save ourselves a little bit there as well. All right, so first one, let's do that 28-inch long piece. So we'll measure out to 28. And there's a couple of different tricks we can do here. One of them is, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of color in the area around where that 28 inches would be. And here's the thing, like if you measure with this, with the tape measure, 28 Okay, I put that line at 28.5. I got distracted. 28 is going to line up with one of the set of holes. And so for me, it looks like this hole here is my 28. So this hole essentially is where we're going to be making our cut. And the interesting thing is it should, a majority of the time, end up being right in the center of the hole is 28 inches. Some of it might not be perfectly exactly there, depending on your tape measure, depending on the specific piece you've got, if you're on an angle a little bit, but it looks pretty close to 28 inches being the center of that row of holes. Now, I can try to mark this with the tape that I have here. So if I do a good job of, let me actually grab my square. I'm going to grab my tiny square because that's a little bit better for this situation. So I got this tiny square here that I can use to transfer the line. So if I kind of just try to stay really nice and straight on the tape measure, if I take, I'm going to use a scribe. This is just a sharp point. If you have a snap punch, that'll work. But it's just a sharp edge. And if I put that right on the 20, okay, well, I can't put it in the hole because it falls. If we put it right on the 28-inch line here, and I move stuff out of the way, what I can do is I can bring my square in, staying square on the edge of the aluminum until it's touching. And then I can scribe this all the way along. And that should be pretty good for the cut we're trying to do. Again, as long as I get rid of that line, we're probably going to be OK. Because like I said, everything can be a little bit shorter. It just can't be longer. OK. Some of the pieces, though, that are shorter, we might be able to use like our calipers, especially like when we do the 2-inch piece off the other side. We'll probably mark that with the calipers to get it. That'll be slightly more accurate because here we are still relying on our tape measure and our ability to put the scribe in the right spot next to the tape measure. But again, everything here, because what actually attaches is where we do the holes, not where the piece ends, we're going to be OK as long as we get really close to the right dimensions. So that is our first one marked. Next step then is going to be to cut this. And I just, like in every video we've made, you can cut this on whatever saw you have that is designed for metal cutting. If you don't have any saws and you have just a metal hacksaw, that'll work. It's going to take more work. Do your best to like scribe the line. I might even scribe the line on both sides so you can see where the line is on this edge as you cut, and you can follow the line down that edge. Maybe you scribe it on all 3 sides to try to keep that cut straight. That'll work. If you have a horizontal bandsaw or a big enough vertical bandsaw, you can use that to cut. This cut is really hard to do with a vertical bandsaw because there's the neck length. You might have to use a hacksaw and cut close to the line, and then you could go and do a clean line on your bandsaw. If you have a jigsaw or sawzall, reciprocating saw with a metal blade, that's going to work. I have a chop saw with a metal blade. And this one is designed to cut metal. So that is my big warning, is a lot of people will have these. They're designed to cut wood. The blade spins kind of too fast on the wood spinning ones to cut metal. You could probably get away with it, but there is a chance that it can grab and throw the piece just based on how fast the blade is spinning. So this one is designed for metal. Also, it has this clamp, so my hands don't have to be anywhere near the metal when I line up to cut it. Now, I'm going to think about this. I need the longer section to be my good section, so I'm going to line the edge of the blade up so it'll just take off that line. So that's what I'm looking to do here. So we'll go ahead and slide this over. And just kind of look at it. And of course, remember, like if you cut it too short, it's probably OK. If you cut it too long, we can always file it or grind it or come back and cut it again. All right, let's do it. All right, and so what we're looking for is we should have about half of the hole still left there, which it looks like it. And the other end, because the blade has thickness, basically I took the hole off. The other half of the hole is completely gone here. So you might see something like that. All right, let's go ahead and unscrew this. I'm going to file down these edges really quickly. good. And you can also, on the inside of these, you could try to use the deburring tool. It's hard because it's got all of the cutouts for the holes. So I think a file works better on this one. When we have the ones that's not cut in the middle holes, I think the deburring tool can work well on the inside of. All right, let's see how that one looks. Right, we want 28 inches here, and we are just about right exactly 28. So I think that one's going to be perfect. Does not look like it's any longer. So I think that one is going to work. All right, and then I want to label this with the part number. I mean, pretty much all the parts we're making right now are going to be a piece cut to a length. We could tape measure it later if we forget what it is. But it is nice to label them just to keep track. So this one, they're all, we labeled ours as SKB 26 because it's Swerve KitBot 2026. And then this 28-inch long piece is going to be 103. All right, so that's one done. We'll set this one off on the side, bring our remaining material back. And we can do this in either order. We can cut our next piece off of this one, which is supposed to be a 15.5-inch section, or we can take our 2 inches off of this edge, and then we will probably have to do 2 cuts for the 15.5-inch either way. So I kind of like the idea of doing 2 inches off of this edge next. And because 2 inches is so short, we can use the calipers for it. But again, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of that hole. So I can use the tape measure really quickly to know. Basically, we're trying to cut dead center in this circle. And if you have experience, like actually if I were doing this just for myself, knowing what the tolerances are, I might just try to eyeball the saw blade to the middle of the hole, and that might end up being good enough. But we're going to do it right. So I'm going to set my calipers to 2 inches, and I'm going to lock them in place. And then if I just run down this edge, right, we can scribe that line. And that line now through there, that is where we're going to cut this one. Now on this one, right, we want to keep the 2-inch section, so the saw blade needs to be on the bigger side of this piece when we go in here. And with most saws, make sure it's kind of cleaned up so your piece sits flat. If you're sitting on a big aluminum shaving, then you might be cutting on more of an angle than you were planning. All right, let's get this one lined up. So again, saw to the long side. And I got a secret for this piece. This piece can be, let me just wait, picturing the model in my head. Yeah, this piece, if you cut this piece too long, it doesn't matter. This piece can be too long, too short, whatever, it's going to be totally fine. Just get close. All right, we're lined up. Let's go ahead and make the cut. Looks good. Let's go ahead and file that down. And we are, in fact, 2.015. So looks like I was just a little long on this one, but again, it's going to be okay. And also, we can make sure we got all the burrs knocked off the edge. All right, this piece is, again, they're all SKB 26, so you can label it with that, or you can skip that part. SKB 26, and this one is 106. 106. All right. 2 pieces down. Let's get what remains of our material here. And sometimes if there are big burrs on the end and you're going to measure off that end, you want to file it even if you're about to cut it. So on this top edge where we're going to be putting the tape measure and doing our measuring, we're going to clean those ends up. Okay, next up, we need to make this piece 15.5 inches long. And we can check too, like we know this piece is well past that. We've got 16 3/4 inches or so. But one of the problems here is we need to make it 15.5 inches long, but we can't have it shifted, right? We know we could do 15.5. If I did 15.5 from what was just cut there, we'd be sort of like right on the edge of this set of holes, but that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is from this hole to the cut should be a quarter inch. So from the center of this hole to where we cut should be a 1/4 of an inch. Now, I can't measure really to the center of the hole. So the first thing that we can do is we can find out what size the hole is. So if we kind of go in here and measure, we can get that that hole is about 0.19, I'd say 0.196 inches, depending on how I wiggle it. Right, I can get 1965, 196, 155. So I'm going to say it's 0.196 inches. Okay, so let's do some math here. We know the hole is 0.196 inches in diameter. And what we want to do is, let's flip that around so it's right side up for you. We want to divide that in half, right? Because we want to know the distance from the center of the hole to the edge of the hole. So if we divide this by 2, I think we're going to get 0.098 inches. Okay, so then that gets us from the center of the hole to the edge of the hole, but we need to go from the center of the hole to 0.25 inches over. So our end goal is to be 0.25 inches over. So if we do 0.250 inches over, we need to subtract from that this distance, though, so we can measure from the edge of the hole. So if we subtract from that 0.098, we're going to carry the 1, 2. So this is a 4. So we're going to need another 1. 14 minus 9 is 5. And then we've got a 1 here. So we're going to be 0.152 inches from the edge of the hole to get to a 1/4 of an inch. So let's test that. So if we set our caliper to our number here, 0.152, 1525, all right, close enough. All right, and we can sort of see where that's going to end up here. So if we just kind of color all this area in, somewhere around there is going to be where we want to mark this. Okay. Then if I go right onto the edge of the hole and do a little scribe line here, let's see if I can get it to show up a little bit better on this one. All right, there we go. All right, so you have a line. Mine ends up really close to the edge of this piece. Yours, I think, should be a little bit farther in. But now, if I put my scribe right on that line and drag it out, then we can scribe that line across where we're going to cut. And what we can do now is we can check, like, does this make sense? So if I just eyeball measuring from my line to the center of the hole, you know, or if I set my calipers to 0.25, I guess, right, and go from the line, does that look like it's the center of the hole? I think that's pretty close. I would believe that. Makes sense to me. All right, so that looks reasonable. So now, basically, whenever we want to be a 1/4 of an inch from the center of the hole to the edge, right, we're going to set our calipers to that 0.152 and scribe a line. And then now we're going to measure from that line to 15.5 inches. And we'll see that we're going to end up somewhere, so 15.5. So it looks like this is the last set of holes we're going to have. Our line is going to be somewhere in between these two holes. Right? And it's going to be a 1/4 of an inch away from the last set of holes on our piece, from the center of the last set of holes on our piece. So that is this row of holes right here. All right, and we can do the same number now, and we're going to use this number a lot. So we're going to go back to 0.152. If only I didn't move my calipers, but I guess we had to check. We had to test. And would get our little mark. Just get a little scribe so we can see where we're going. And then I will get the scribe right on the mark, line up to it, and then, oh, try that again. All right, that looks good. And then one more time, just because this is a weird piece, let's just check. Let's double check. So if we measure from line to line, it's 15.5. That is 15.5, perfect. And then we can just sort of like, I mean, we can eyeball it or we can go back on the calipers. Are we about 1/4 of an inch to the center of the hole? Yeah, I buy that, and yeah, I buy that. So that's what we're looking for. You could also, if you wanted to be extra sure, you didn't have your tape measure, you could count the number of holes in between. But again, as long as we're 15.5 and the distance from our end holes to our lines are what we want, then we are good to go. Now, we're going to have to make 2 cuts for this one, of course. So let's line up. Remember, we're keeping the inside bit, so we want to bring the saw blade in from the outside edge to get it lined up. Okay, and we're just going to look to take that line away. Just barely take the line away. Okay, once again, if we go a little bit too far, it's going to be kind of okay. As long as you're not getting too close to the hole, as long as you're not blowing the hole out, it's going to work out fine. All right, let's go ahead and make this cut. All right. And we'll just clean off those edges. And then we'll flip it around. And we'll do the same cut on the other side. And right up to that line. All right, let's do it. All right, filing it down. Okay, and we can sort of do our checks now. This piece should be 15 inches across, or 15.5 inches across, and it is really, really close to 15.5 inches across, so I'm happy with that. And then the other check that you can do, remember, we wanted that edge to be 0.152 away from the edge of the hole. Okay, so we're off by 0.004 inches, which is like nothing. That is going to be totally fine. And again, remember, this can be off by a decent amount in either direction. Okay, let's label this one. This is SKB 26 dash, and the 15.5 inch long one is 101, 101. All right, so those 3 are done. I'm actually gonna move those to the back table. Let's get our second big stick out. And this is like, I tried to find the measurement that would have the least amount of waste. So that's not too bad for an amount of waste here. All right, so we've got our whole second stick out now. And this one, basically we've got 9.5 inches from either side is our first cut. It's fine to do that with a tape measure. And I'm going to do factory edge from both sides. We might as well go ahead and mark both of these sides as at once and then do 2 cuts to save a little bit of time. So 9.5. I get my scribe right at that 9.5 line. This one, again, if it's a little bit too short, that's okay. If it's a little bit too long, you might end up having to file stuff off. So this piece actually is going to be a piece that sticks off the front of the robot. If it sticks out too far, might be in the way of being able to attach your bumper or in the way of being a legal size. All right, I forgot to mark with the line, but I'll leave myself a couple arrows here, and I can see it. It's not showing up. It's very easy to see in person, but it's just, you can kind of just barely see that scribe line there on the camera. All right, the other side I will definitely Sharpie up. So let's spin this around. We're doing literally the exact same thing. So if I go to 9.5, looks like we're going to be on this row of holes here. So the center of this row of holes. So if I add my Sharpie marks first, or my permanent marker marks first. All right, then we can try to get the tape measure as straight as possible. Put it right at that 9 and a, I think I missed. Let me try again. Okay, right at 9 and a half. Cool. Bring the square in. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and we can cut both ends. And remember, we're keeping the short piece, so the saw blade should be on the longer side. Looks close. Let's go for it. All right, I'm gonna flip the piece around and let's get our second hole here. Make sure it's not on any aluminum shavings. And again, we're keeping the outside, so we want the saw blade on the long side, towards the inside here. That looks reasonable. Let's send it. All right, quick file on those ends. Something on this one. Sometimes you may even want, if the corners feel sharp, you may want to like knock the corners down. Remember, there are inspectors that will check your robot out, and if your robot has sharp edges, they may say, hey, this is going to damage the field or game pieces. They may have you change stuff. This piece is kind of buried inside the robot and behind the bumper, so should not be a major problem. Let's double check our measurements here. That is really, that's just a hair under 9.5. And then this one is, same thing, pretty much right on 9.5. All right, so these two look good. Let's label them. So our 9.5 inch long pieces are SKB. So this is SKB 26. Whether you put the 26 or not probably doesn't matter. And this is 104. 104. SKB 26 104. All right. Next up on this piece, we're going to do a 21.5 and a 4.75 off of this one. All right, let's do our 21.5. Now the 21.5, this is the rail going across the back of the robot frame, connecting those two Swerve modules together. So just like the 15.5 inch long ones that we did that do the same thing on the sides of the robot, this one is going to need to have that 1/4 inch from the hole to where we cut. So we can kind of measure this out. Okay. All right, so this one, I guess the first thing is we need to take the little bit off the edge, right? So we should be that 0.152 off the edge. Looks like I'm about 1/8 of an inch or so to the end of the material. But if we put our tape measure sort of like, you know, about that 1/4 of an inch off, we can go up to 21.5. And this is, I think, roughly where we're going to end up making our cut. So somewhere related to that hole. Okay, so we're, and I guess, you know, from the edge of the thing, I'd be a little bit farther, but I'm just trying to eyeball where that is, just so we get the right, you know, the right distance. Or if you measure, kind of line it up on the center of the hole, you should be 21 inches to, you know, the row of holes that we're using, right? So from center of hole to center of hole should be 21 inches, and then we're going to be 1/4 inch past each hole center on each side. That's going to get us our 21.5. So this is, again, at about 21.5 from where I estimate the other end to be. So I can go ahead and do a mark here. And we'll double check that before we mark and cut. On the other side then, we're going to kind of do the same thing, right? So we need to do that same 0.152 off the edge, so we can mark that side as well. Do a little bit from the edge. We've got our mark. That looks good. Okay, and then same process. We'll get our scribe right on the line. Square it up till it's touching. And go ahead. And then now that we have that mark, right, we can double check again, right? Like again, we're lining up on that mark. And the other end, the other edge should be 21.5 into the area where that Sharpie line is, and that looks good. So now on that other side, what we can do is the same thing. So into that Sharpie line from one of our holes, we're going to do a little scribe, a little scratch. All right, and then we'll get our scribe right on our mark and drag it across and drag it across. Okay, and I know this, we marked this in a little bit of a confusing way, so you can do one more check. If you measure your best from line to line, if it looks like it's about 25 inches, you're in good shape, right? If we make a mistake here, it's going to be by ½ an inch. So like, for example, if we mark the wrong row of holes, I would never do that, by the way. I might have done that. You would be off by like ½ an inch, right? Because we would be all the way over here instead. So if it looks like the 21.5 is the closest line, even if you're off a little bit, then we're going to trust our caliper marking to know that the dimension is correct. So that looks good to me. Let's go ahead and make our cuts. Again, we're keeping the big part in the middle, so I'm going to line the saw blade up to the edge of that middle section. Let's go ahead and get our first cut lined up. So there's just like the tiniest little trim. Okay, that looks good. And let's go ahead and make the cut. Okay, flip it around, line up on the other side. Yeah, that seems all right. Seems close enough. All right, and we'll go ahead and make this cut as well. Looks good. Let's get our edges here. Again, this one is the back edge, so it's going to end up inside the Swerve modules, but if you wanted to hit the corners, you could hit the corners as well. All right, let's see. We should see about 21.5 inches here. And we are, I'm just like a hair, it's really close. I might be a hair long on this. And I think that's going to be okay. Again, like as long as you're very close to it, you can be a tiny bit over, or you could be a lot under, and it's going to be okay. Let's mark this one. So this one is, they're all, of course, SKB 26 dash, and this was our 21.5 inch long one. That is 102. All right, we have one more bit of scrap here. Let's see. Gonna clean up the edges so we have something clean to mark from. All right, now this one is our 4.75 inch piece. This one is a little bit unusual, right? So it's not on the ½ inch pitch like all of our other pieces have been. And that is because this one, on one side, we want it to be that ½ inch distance. So on one side of this piece, it is going to go teed up against another piece, right against another piece. It'll be right on the end of that piece like this, actually. On the other end, we're cutting it sort of when it ends with the straight part of the Swerve module. So that's why it's a 1/4 of an inch there, which means as long as we get the 1/2 inch side right, the other side, lots of error is okay. So let's go ahead and need a 1/2 inch from the edge this time. So we could, yeah, we're going to have to redo our math. All right, now we're going to go back to our math here. And this time, right, we need to not be 1/4 inch away. We need to be 1/2 inch away. So we can redo this as 0.5, I'm going to get a 0, 0, minus that 0.098. And this time, it's going to be equals, it's going to be 0.402. Is that right? 98, yeah, 402. So that's our new dimension. So we've got, if we need to be 1/4 inch from the hole, we're going to use that 0.152 number. If we need to be 1/2 inch from the hole, we're going to use that 0.402. All right, so if we set our calipers to 402, I can see on this piece that I have, this side, I don't have enough room from this hole. That's off the edge of the piece. So I'm going to use the other side. And we expect this to be roughly halfway into the next hole over, because the holes are 1/2 inch apart. So basically, if we did center of hole to center of hole at 1/2 inch, then we should line up. But edge of hole to center of a hole at 0.42 should be right. And that does look like, if I get right on the edge there, it's about the center of the hole. So I think our 0.402 looks good. That means, too, we know that we can mark this area where the center of the hole is going to be. That's where our line is going to end up. So this one's not going to be quite as simple because obviously where we go to scribe here, it's a hole. I can't like do the little mark. Instead, the best I think we can do, and again, you can just, it's probably accurate enough to do this also just by taking the tape measure, right, and trying to put a line in the center of one hole and marking. That's probably going to be good enough for you. But because we did a good job of getting where the edge to it should be, if I kind of get this right on the end of that point, I can sort of see here where this is going to be, where this is going to line up. And I can do it actually on the inside is slightly easier because I can kind of see where this is laying down too. And so we can sort of like make a little mark here. The key is, though, from this mark, I need to be on the outside of that mark in order to be in the right spot. And you can see that it's definitely not in the center of the hole here. But if I go to the outside of that mark, let's see how close we are to the center of the hole. So if we bring it over and we drag that through, that looks, to my eye, the center of the hole. And again, it's probably accurate enough for you to just kind of like see if you can get, your scribe on the center of the hole and come over to it as well. And then you could check once that's in there, right? You could maybe come back and check. Does that look like it's lined up from the point? And I would say, yeah, I would say that's close enough for us. Okay, so that's this side done. That's our 1/2 inch side. Now the other side, we need that 0.152 number again. So I'm going to set my calipers to 152 again, 0.152. And then the overall length of this piece, right, was 4.75. So if we measure from the line over, right, at 4.5, this hole is at 4.5, so we're looking for our line to be somewhere in between those two holes. So I guess I wanted the Sharpie for this one. So 4.5 is here, 4.75 should be somewhere in between those, basically exactly in the center of these two holes. All right, so let's go ahead and mark that. And again, we don't have to be insanely accurate for this. There is one more trick. Like when we're not, like the last one we were on the edge of the piece, this one we're in between two sets of holes. So there's one more thing you can do, which is if you use your calipers with the 0.152, that number should match from both sides. So if I scribe a little bit on this one, that little bit of an arc on this hole, if I reach from the other hole over and go to scribe again, those lines should line up on top of each other. And they did. And if you do like a big long arc around the hole like this, you could get that whole arc going. You could do the arc from the other side, and the point where they touch, that tangent point, would be the right spot. But we're going to go ahead and go right on our initial mark here. And again, bring our square up and scribe that in. All right, so this one is ready for us to cut. Let's head back over to the saw. Clean it up, drop it in. And we're keeping the middle part, so saw blade should be to the outside of the lines. Okay, that seems pretty good. Clamp that in. And let's do it. All right, gonna flip it over. Let's get our other cut. Okay, and this one, the 1/2 inch side here from the hole, this one we want to be exactly on the line or cut it a little short, because this one is going to connect directly right to another piece. So if we're too long, that could be a problem for us. All right, let's go ahead and make this cut. All right, get that file on it. Seems pretty good. This one is the no holes box, so if you do have a deburring tool, you could hit the inside corners with that. That's pretty fun. All right, let's see where we're at. This should be 4.75 inches long, 4 3/4 inches long, and we are pretty much right on. I would say I'm just a hair short, which again is probably okay. All right, let's label this one. So they're all SKB 26 dash. And then this one is our 4.75 inch long one, which is number 105. All right, and that is our second 47 inch long stick of 1x2 box done. We got one more to go. Okay, this one, what are we doing? We're doing a lot of cuts on this one. So we have another 4.75 inch one that we're going to do. Then we've got two 6.5 inch ones to do. Those are going to be bumper mounts. We've got another 15.5, which is the other side of our chassis, and then one more 2-inch long one. Let's go ahead and do the 2-inch long one off an edge, because I think having a nice clean edge on that one is going to be good for us. Doesn't really matter which edge we measure from. So I'm going to go 2 inches on my calipers because that works for these short lengths. And as I sit here trying to get exactly 2 inches and fail, remember this one is, I said with this one, it can be actually a little bit too long and a little bit too short because we have this factory edge, which is the side that we really care about getting to line up. So I gave up and I'm at 0.19995. Should be somewhere through the center of these holes is what we're looking for. The 4th row of holes. All right, so let's go ahead and scribe that line in. Looks good. And we might as well mark something on the other side too. Do 2 cuts at once. So on the other side, we need a piece that is 6.5 inches long. And this piece, the length does not matter. One edge we want to be really nicely 1/2 inch from the center of the hole to the edge, because that again is going to butt up against another piece. So we want that to be on pitch. But the other end goes to nothing. So if we're a little off, no big deal. 6.5 is going to be basically through the center of these holes here. So we measure out to 6.5. Whatever hole's closest, it's going to be the center of that. And we'll go back to our longer piece technique of, if I get my tape measure as straight as possible, I'll just put this down right at 6.5. And then we'll bring the square up until it's touching and mark it there. All right, double check. 6.5, yep. Double check this one. 2 inches, yep, we're ready to cut. Knock some of this stuff out of the way, make sure we're sitting flat. All right, 2 inches, we want the tiny bit, so the blade is going to be to the inside. Just, that looks close enough. All right, and let's cut it. All right, and now we flip it over. And this is our 6.5 cut. Again, we're keeping the short side, so the blade needs to be to the inside of it. And that looks pretty good. Lock it in. All right. File these edges down. That was the factory edge, but if you feel a burr, file it anyway. Just on one side. All right. And we'll get the edge we cut. Okay, let's get these two labeled. All right, the 2-inch piece, again, is small, SKB 26 dash, this is 106. And then this is 6.5, right? This is a brand new one. All right, yeah, yep, okay. So this is going to be SKB 26 dash, this is going to be 109. Okay, those two are good. All right, now, next up, on one side, so that, let's see, we're in the same place, huh, for both of these? Yeah, those were both on 1/2-inch pitch. So right now the two sides are the same. So if you're looking at our cut guide, you can flip this over and it doesn't matter, it's still going to be fine. What we're going to do now is on one side, we're going to cut another 6.5-inch piece. And on the other side, we are going to cut our 15.5-inch piece. And I might have it in the cut guide to where you're doing everything from one side. It doesn't really matter whether your extra piece is in the middle or next to one cut. So you can shift them around a little bit and it's still going to work out. But let's go ahead and mark our 6.5. Now the 6.5 is a little tricky because we need 1/2 inch from the center of the holes to one side, and we're already less than that on this side, right? So we're going to have to mark in a little bit, that 1/4 inch away from the holes to get it. Oh no, actually for the 6.5, we're going to have to just jump all the way to the next set of holes in order to make it work, right? So for 6.5, we need the hole to be 1/2 inch out. So we're basically going to be looking at making one cut through the center of this line of holes is the best we can do. And again, we can do that in a couple different ways. We can use that 0.402 on the calipers to help align us. There's a little bit of eyeballing going on one way or another, but if I go out to the edge, right, I can use that line and sort of the center of the circle. See if I can get lined up nicely there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we'll bring this in. And then we can look at it. That looks like it's in the center of the hole. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, with this one, with the 6.5-inch one that we're going to cut on this side, it is okay to make it a little bit too short again, because we're going to have the brackets that hold it together. All right, next up, we said it's going to be 6.5. So if we measure from the center of that hole out to, let's get it right on the edge there, and we're going to go out to 6.5. So that is going to be 6.5. That is these holes here, going to be the center of these holes here. Okay. And double check. Yep. So then again, it's going to be that 402 coming off of this hole here, the center of that hole there. And then sort of using that to get me to the center of this hole. Okay, I think that was on the point there. Get the square in. And let's see. That looks really close to the center of those holes too. Double check. 6.5. All right, that looks good. Yeah, let's do it one at a time now. Let's cut this one at a time. Since we're marked. Okay, we're keeping the 6.5 piece in the middle, so the blade should now be to the outside of this cut. That seems just a touch more. All right, seems good. Let's try it. All right, and then we can slide this out. We're going to make our second cut. Now we're keeping the outside piece, so the blade has to be to the inside. And if anything, it's okay to be just a hair short on these. Of course, if you're just a hair long, then you just either take them to a grinding wheel or file them for a sec. All right, let's do it. All right. Knock some burrs off. Left the whole thing in the corner there. All right. And we should be, hopefully, 6.5 inches on this piece. And we are, yeah, pretty close. Might just be a hair long. We'll see if that causes us any problems later, but I think we're going to be okay. All right, and let's label this one. This is another SKB 26-109. All right, get the rest of our material here. And again, we've done only 1/2-inch cuts, so our two ends are essentially the same as far as we're concerned right now. Next cut that we want to do is a, let's do a 4.75. We need another 4.75. So we'll do that next. Now the 4.75, if you remember, was 0.25 inches from a hole on one side and 0.5 inches from the hole on the other side. So from our edge here, we can't do 0.5, already too far, so we might as well do our 0.25 inches, which means the calipers get set to 0.152. And color in this area here. And with 0.152, we're going to just do a little mark here at the top of our circle. Okay. I touched the wet ink. All right. And get the scribe right on. Farthest point there. And let's scribe our line in. That looks good. All right, and then the other side of this, right? So we want to be 4.75. We're doing another one of our 105s. So 4.75 means we want to be, we'll do the Sharpie first, or the marker first. So 4.75. 4.75 should be in the middle of these holes then. That is our 4.75 spot. All right, and again, this one is, I guess we could have done this on the earlier one. This one is actually short enough that we could, in theory, also do our calipers at 4.75 from our first line. That is one way we can do this. It's actually slightly better to do it the other way, though. So if our first line is accurately 0.25 from the center of this hole out, then the 4.75 is going to be perfect. But what we care most about on these pieces is that the distance from the last hole to the edge of the piece is what we care about. So we'll go back to the 0.402. We'll do our best to eyeball that one and get it lined up. 402. All right. Okay, so if we're like right at the 402 and we come off the edge of this, and just a little bit of a corner. Yep, looks good. Line it up. Let's scribe it in and see how it looks. Yeah, that's about the center. All right, let's cut this one. Again, we're keeping the middle piece. We're obviously not keeping the tiny shaving on the edge, so the blade needs to be to the outside of the line. And this 0.25 side doesn't really matter if it's a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. Nothing, it's not touching anything else, so it's going to be okay. Clamp that in. Let's make the cut. All right. Slide it over to the other one. This time, we do want to be on the saw side of the line. And this one we want to get close. If it's a little short, that's okay. This one does touch another piece. So we don't want to be too long. Okay, that looks good. Clamp that in. Let's make the cut. Back to the file. Another one that's not got holes, so we can deburr the inside this way as well. You can just keep filing it too if you prefer. All right, we should be about 4.75. We are about 4.75. Looks like I'm just a hair short. That's going to be fine. All right, perfect. Label it, of course. All right, so this one is SKB 26. 4.75 is part number 105. Okay, we have one more piece to make out of this. And actually, that is the last piece for our frame, for our Swerve frame. All right, this one needs to be 15.5. This is the side frame. It's going into the Swerve modules, so we need a 1/4 inch from each hole. Ideally, not much more. So back to 0.152 on our calipers. Got that one really fast. All right, and then we can color in the area. We know it's about here. It's always about here. Okay, make our little mark. Get on the mark. And again, usually it's as far as you can get on the mark because that would mean you're the farthest point of the hole. That looks good. All All right, and then we're going to measure 15.5 inches. So this piece is way longer than we need, which is great. You got a little bit extra here. You can't remake any of the long pieces, but if you had to remake some of the short pieces, you could do that. So we'll just kind of line it up. We're looking for 15 and a half. 15 is here, 15 and a half is here. So in between these two holes, that's what we want to see for this one. It should be in between holes, not on holes, because it's a 1/4 inch out from the holes. So that's the spot. Let's color that area in so we can do our marking. Okay, and I'm still at 0.152, did not change it. Gonna find the highest point in that hole. Little mark. Let's get right on the edge of it. Bring the square in. Double check. 15 and a half, that's what we want. All right, let's cut this thing. Okay, obviously we want the saw blade on the outside of this line. We're not keeping this tiny little throwaway bit that's here. All right, let's do it. We'll just slide over. This time we want to keep the part that's hanging off the end, our 15.5 inch side, so we'll line up to the outside of this line. And these ones, again, if they're a little too short, that's not going to hurt anything. A little too long, probably still okay. If they're way too long, then they'll hit the swerve wheel. All right, let's make our cut. All right, files. All right, and are we 15 and a half? We are, I might just be a tiny bit longer than 15 and a half. We'll see if that gives us any problems. I think it's going to be okay. It's close enough. All right, label this one. This is our last one. So once again, SKB 26. And then this one is another 101. All right, that is now all of the frame members that we need cut for our Swerve chassis frame. I'm going to clean up all of these aluminum shavings, and then we will come back and start assembling it. All right, time for assembly. We're going to start with SKB 101 and 102. That should be your 15.5 inch long pieces, and then the 121.5 inch long piece. Also, some of these were in the kit, the donated kit. So if you got that, you might have a bunch of these. If not, you will need a bunch of, these are 1032 bolts. They have button heads, and they are 2.5 inches long. Now, I think you want the button head bolts. They're a little bit harder to find. You might have to order these online or find like an actual bolt supply place. Because I think most hardware stores won't go this long in button heads with the Allen wrench to drive it. You might be able to get Phillips ones, but it is hard to make those as tight and as strong. But what I'm thinking is eventually this is going to be sticking out the bottom of the robot. And if you try to go over the bump in the middle of the field, anything that sticks out has a chance of getting caught there. So I like the idea of having the dome rounded button head bolts. So these 2.5 inch long ones are going to work everywhere. So if you're just buying those, buy a bunch of that. We're going to use the same 1032 lock nuts that were in actually the KitBot crate. So you probably have enough of these left over. But if not, you can pick up any 1032 lock nuts, whether they're the skinny ones or the thicker ones, and it's going to be fine. So these are the nylocks. All right. In theory, where we can't use a nylock, we should use Loctite, so I've still got that out. And then, of course, I've got the Swerve modules that we made in the previous video. We're going to also need some of these corner brackets. We're going to be using some of these 90-degree corner gussets and some of these straight, I guess these are 1-inch long joiner plates that we're using. These, I think, are the same no matter what vendor you order them from. These ones we got from Andy Mark, they're a little bit longer, I think, than some of the other companies, but any straight 1-inch wide joiner plate is probably going to work for you. All right, let's start with the back of the robot. That's the easiest one. So we're going to take our two inverted modules, our two eye modules. That is the motor sticking down, not sticking up. If you have only X2s, then grab 2 of them. That's because you have no choice. And basically, if we turn this so that I am inside the robot, this is going to be our back edge of the robot here going across. And we're going to end up with our 21.5-inch long piece that is SKB 26102. And that is going to run all the way across the back of both of these pieces. And this is really easy to line up because the first hole in the box here is going to go into the farthest inside hole on our Swerve module. Now with the Swerve modules, the plates here, I think I can set it on this side pretty comfortably. So I'm going to be going up in the air with this. But the top plate here, this is tapped, so that is where it's going to screw into. The bottom holes are just clearance holes. So that means when we do this, the bolt is going to have to start like next to the wheel, on the wheel side, and then it'll be able to go up and through. And then when you get to that top section, it'll screw in. So like I said, we're going to start with lining up that first hole on here, right on the very edge, with the farthest in hole on the side here. So we'll slide that down until it's lined up. I can't see. Looks like there is where we want to be. All right. Get that started and going through. And this first one, we're going to put that in. And again, not make it tight yet, just get it started. But at this stage, before we move on this side, what we want to do is we want to see if that wheel is going to hit. So in some instances, if you cut this a little bit too long, when the wheel swings by, it might hit. Or if you can't get it to line up because it's crashing into, oh, there we go, this little raised section down here where the bolts were put in, if you're crashing into that, then you're just going to have to go and cut down a little bit more here, or really it's just the inside corner. So you could just cut off that inside corner if it's a little too long. But you can see I have just a little bit of a gap there between where we want to be, and the wheel can rotate around past without hitting. So as long as that's the case, go ahead and drop 2 more bolts in. So we're going to do every other hole, because actually this hole in between, there's nothing that we're bolting to. You can actually see the aluminum directly in that hole, whereas the other ones have a little bit of the anodized plate that we're going to catch in. So those ones are actually going to help squeeze everything together the way we want. And 3 bolts should be enough. So we're going to get these 3 going across. All right, and then want to make sure these are nice and tight. Now, actually, just kidding, because these are screwing into not a nylock nut, a lock nut, these are the ones that we wanted to put some Loctite on. So let me undo those. We'll redo them with the Loctite. Now, if you think that you're going to be disassembling stuff, if you're just getting this together real quick to test it, and you know it's going to get disassembled and reassembled at some point before you compete, then skip the Loctite. do that later. But once you're ready to do the final assembly, you should go ahead and Loctite it in because you do not want your frame loosening up. Now, the good news for these bolts, though, is they're always accessible. You can always tip the robot on the back or on its side and be able to tighten those bolts. These ones are always accessible. Some of the ones we did on the Swerve module itself, you might have to take something else out before you can get to the bolt you want to retighten. So for example, like when we mounted the motors, right? Like you couldn't do those without taking that whole spacer, that like silver football-shaped plate off. So a few issues with the hidden ones is that, like, first of all, you won't even know they're getting loose, and it's more work to fix them. So for sure, on stuff like that, you want to get that Loctite going. All right. Okay, this side is done. Again, let's visualize it right side up. Okay, so this is the back of our robot. That means we need the other module to come in this direction to finish the back. Okay, so now that we know kind of what the back is, you can, if you're careful when you flip these over, it's going to rest on the two motor shafts and on the encoder. So you want to be gentle when you set these down upside down. You can do it, it's okay, but don't be slamming it around. So now that we're here, we can try to line up this set of holes. Right, and I am going to drop the first one in just to make sure it goes. And when the first one goes, there we go. When the first one's going, then we can check that wheel, make sure everything is clearing. It looks like we're good. We're in good shape here. Is that some string? All right, now we can, I guess I'll do that one last, but we can start to Loctite and tighten these bolts in. And just a little drop is enough. And I know I said this in the inverted part of the Swerve video, but do not use red Loctite ever. Make sure you got blue. Blue is medium strength, it's removable. Red is permanent. And our last one on this side. All right, looks good. I'm going to flip this back right side up again. Okay, so this is the back of the robot. It's going to be a pretty wide robot. This should be, I think, 30 inches wide when all is said and done here. We can check that. Yep, just a hair under 30 is what we want to see. Now, next, we're going to have our two. These are the SKB 101s. They're going to attach on the sides going forward. So we're going to have one on this side going forward and one on this side going forward. All right, and then our modules are going to connect onto those. Our front non-inverted modules are going to connect onto those. And we're going to continue. Then we're going to have an issue where the front section we can't cover up because we need to leave that open for the intake. So I think the easiest, though, is not to get these involved yet, but instead to either tip these up on their side or flip them on the back. I think flipping it over was pretty easy for me to work on, so I'm going to go with that orientation again. And I'm going to do the same quick test here of getting one started and making sure nothing is colliding. This is the reason why, right? Like this one, if you cut too long, it might hit something. And that looks good. Might as well just check the other side while we're at it. Just to be safe. And this is what I meant too. Like if you cut this one a little bit long, you can get away with it. It still shouldn't hit. All right, and that clears, and we're in place. All right, so now we can start adding our Loctite and tightening this row of bolts in. that last one with some Loctite. All right. And for all of these, can't remember if I did it on these ones or not, but you do probably want to get the angled Allen wrench in there. Give them all that extra tug just to make sure they are really tight. We got the whole plate spreading the force out, and then again, you'll have the thicker wall on your box as well. So you're not really going to crush the box down. All right, let's go to the other corner and repeat the process. Add some Loctite. Screw it in. And then the third one. All right, and let's just make sure we give it all that one extra little tug so they're all tight. I'll check this other side here just in case. Yeah, those are pretty tight. All right. Again, let's go back to this orientation just so we can see. All right, back of the robot. Now we have our sides going forward. And we want to check now, remember, all of the wires on our Swerve modules, well, all right, I'll use this one. All the wires on the Swerve module of this one are going back in this direction. So if I attach this one on this side instead, those wires are going to be going across the front of the robot. That's not what we want. So make sure you figure out which one has the wires going back towards the other module. And then that is where we're going to line this up and connect it. Now, it gets a little tricky because I can't flip it over on its back anymore because they're different heights. They're different module heights. Okay. So what I like to do is you can kind of just barely, if you're careful, you can get the wheel of your front module right on the edge of the table. And what that'll let me do is that'll let me reach up from underneath the table to slide in the bolts. And I just want to get that first one started again, just so I can do the check to make sure we're good lengthwise, which I think we are. I mean, you know, this one especially, we can see we're right at the edge of the circle there. I can lift it up a little bit, and that wheel is going to spin through, no problem. All right? So now we will Loctite up on that. And then I can reach up from the bottom for one of these. I did the wrong hole for the first time. All right, this time we're good. And screw that up. And then once this one's in, I think I can tip it because it's somewhat supported now. And it's not going to fall down on me. So I think we can tip it back if we're just careful this way. All right, I'm going to get a second one here and get that dab of Loctite on it. Okay, and we're going to be going through this middle hole here. Screw that one in. Take out that top one. And all right, let's add some Loctite onto that. And then this is for our topmost hole here. All right, let's see if we can do the other one just hanging out in the air like this. it'll at least be exciting. All right, and I almost put it on upside down, so I would have had one wheel facing a different direction than the rest. That would have been weird. Again, my wires are going the right direction. That's kind of what saved me there. We'll go through this top hole here. Try to hold it lined up. I think that doing it on the edge of the table is my suggested method for you. Because kind of like when you line the holes up, they stay lined up. Here I'm having to work a lot harder to hold everything in place. All right, let's see if we rotate. We're clearing. We're happy. So I'll let that rest for a second. And let's get some Loctite on our bolt. Now I got to rotate this. And so I'm jiggling kind of the Swerve module to get the hole lined up. That's the penalty for doing it up in the air like this, but not bad. All right, next one. A little bit of Loctite. And middle hole. There we go. And then we'll take the top one out. It also feels like as we keep adding weight, as that new module is attached there, it definitely is right on the edge of tipping over. So I gotta be real careful. Loctite. And top hole. Okay, let's go back on the wheels. And that's starting to look good. We can check our side dimension. Right now, we should be at 24, and I am at 24, or just a hair under 24. We're going to end up being at 25 when all is said and done, but in order to get the intake to not crash into these motors, we had to shift it a little bit farther forward of the wheels here. All right, next piece that we want to work on is, we can kind of do this in a few different ways, but go ahead and find SKB 26103 and 104s. Those are going to be the next two pieces that we're working with. Let me get these wires some kind of out of the way. All right, so our 104s are going to end up going right into those modules, heading straight back to give us another connection point. And then our 103 here is going to go across the entire frame of the robot and connect with them like this. That's going to mean that we're not just dangling these on the end of one box piece at the front. We're going to have this second box piece that comes back that connects everything together. And we get our second cross frame member here. The ramp then is going to straddle over this for the intake. And then the roller and the rest of the fuel mechanism is going to sit kind of up front in that area. So the easiest thing to do is if we attach our 104s next, that's going to help line us up with the position that we want to be in. We're using the same bolts. Nothing has changed for this. And we'll keep Loctiting because we will be screwing these into the modules. Now, on the front here, and I don't know, again, the easiest way to do this because we got to kind of, here's the deal. We need 1 inch of this box to be sticking out past the front of our robot, which means 1 inch is going to be the center of the second hole. So when we go to line this one up, that second hole should basically be splitting the edge of our frame here. And we're going to want the third hole in from this bracket. That's the hole that we want to line up with. So essentially, it's going to be the third hole in is going to go the third hole in. All right, but this is one of those ones that I got to do from the bottom. So we either have to tip up, which we can try. In hindsight, it was obvious that that was going to happen. But let's go ahead and tip up. I'm trying not to get it on the wires. I don't want to put it down on the wires here. And I think if I shim some stuff underneath, if I put something underneath each of these Swerve modules, they'll stay straighter up. That'll be a little bit better for us. OK, cool. Now, we are ready. I think. I made a mess of everything. OK, so let's go ahead and do a drip of Loctite on here. And then it's that third hole in. So 1, 2, third hole in is going to be this one. And on my plate here, or on my box here, I'm going to line up the third hole with the third hole. That looks like it, more or less. All right, and we can tighten that one down. It's fine. We can also hit it with the other end Allen wrench, make sure it's really tight. It will still rotate. You'll still be able to kind of push it out or pull it in if you need to. But this is basically going to be resting against, there's this spacer down here, and it's basically going to be resting in against that is roughly where we're going to be. All right, let's do the same thing on, actually, let's get our SKB 106s, the teeny tiniest little boxes. Because these attach in the same place. Like, we don't need to put these on now. We could put them on later. But we're like oriented and ready to go for them. So I think we should do it. So these are going to sit right next to the first ones we put in. All right, remember when I said you can tighten it down all the way? It looks like it's squeezing a little bit too tight for me to get this other box in. So I am going to loosen it up just a little bit so we have more play until we get the second one attached. All right, this one is going to go so the tops are flat with each other. So again, it's going to be the third hole, but it's going to be in the very first hole on our Swerve plate here. All right, but first, got to Loctite. So I need that third and fourth arms. On your team, you should have plenty of people, right? So you should have at least another person that can help out with this, hold stuff in place while somebody else comes in and bolts it. And that I would recommend. Makes life easier. All right. And now I'm going to snug these up, but I'll probably hit them with the Allen wrench going the other direction afterwards. It feels good. They're in, and kind of like they're going to end up sitting, you know, flat to each other. So it does seem like this one is not quite touching that post. It's going to be up just a hair from touching that post. And you'll kind of know because the factory edges should line up. I think I made that one just a hair too tight. All right. So we're kind of like wanting this top surface to be nice and even right now. That's our goal. That's how we know things are in square. Now, if you are interested and you have like sort of the extra weight and stuff like that, you could potentially take a bolt and run through this direction. I believe if you do it here, that will work. The middle hole of our 3x3 grid on this one. So you could do one bolt there and bolt them together. That'll keep them flat against each other. And might add a little bit of strength. I'm not going to do it. I don't think it's strictly speaking necessary, but it would not hurt probably. All right, now on the other side, we're going to do the same thing. So we have these two pieces on this side. Jump to our other front module here, and we are going to do the exact same thing. So get myself a Loctited bolt ready to go. All right, and third hole down. Third hole in. I lined up on the second hole. Third hole in. We'll see. It's really easy, by the way, when you're doing this, for the bolt to kind of get crooked inside and not line up with the hole on the other side. So that's what I'm looking at here. I'm kind of eyeballing that and trying to get that lined up. Okay, second one. with some Loctite here. And then our little 3x3 grid, little 2-inch square. Did I really? I over-tightened it again. I thought I left it loose. All right. Slide that in. So that's going to be, again, first hole and first hole. And our boxes are going to match on the outside edge. Let's get that lined up. There we go. Okay. We can kind of see again, all of these should be flat together. And I'm not going to go super tight, but I'm going to snug them down now that it looks like everything is relatively lined up. Okay. Now we can tip this down. All right, and the next thing we want to do is this piece here is going to run across like this. Okay, and in order to connect that, we are going to use these angle brackets on both sides. So it'll fit right here, going across the entire robot. And then on each side of this, we're going to end up with an angle bracket on the top in order to start connecting stuff together. Now, on the bottom of all of this, we're going to actually use the belly pan of the robot instead of having individual plates. So we're going to have one big polycarbonate sheet that goes on the bottom, and we'll attach that everywhere needed. So we won't need another L bracket underneath. We'll be able to use that plate to get the job done. Now, with these plates, because they're not going all the way through, we have a few different options here for what we want to do. We definitely want to get this kind of connected and going, but it's going to be hard for us to line up and attach the belly pan with this attached with bolts sticking out the bottom. So if you use bolts, we're going to probably have to remove them later. I'll do one side with bolts, but our other option is to use some rivets. So let's go ahead and bolt one side on, and then we'll rivet the other side. And I would say this is a situation where if you have both options available to you, I would probably go with the rivets here. All right, so this bolt then, again, actually in this case, because we're going to take it out again, it probably doesn't matter. But I'm going to go up from the bottom. And we're going to go in the first hole here. Come on now. Line up. There we go. You should be able to go in the first hole. And there should be a little bit of a gap. So if you can't wiggle this at all back and forth, it's still OK as long as the holes line up. But that's essentially the issue that we're looking out for here. And then we'll get the nut started. And I'll do it again in the corner spot. Now, if you're bolting, 2 bolts might be enough. You might want to go with 3 when all is said and done. But since I know we have to take this off to put the belly pan on later, I am not going to go to 3. I'm going to just do 2 for now. But we do want to tighten it in because we do want everything to ultimately be lined up and ready to use. So we'll go ahead and tighten these down a bit. There it is. All right, now we can go again. Okay, still have a little bit of play. I'm not 100% tight yet. Let's get the other one going. Now this one is quite annoying because it's right next to the Swerve module. I guess let's see how long we can use the ratchet for. Not bad. That's past halfway. We at least got it past halfway that way. All right, and now we're going to have to detach the wrench to keep going. All right, that is just starting to get tight. Okay, then our cross frame piece comes up here. And I'm going to take not the factory side, I'm going to take the cut side first. Remember, the other side was factory, so we know the other side is going to line up. But with the cut side, what you want to do is you want to go here and you want to see, hey, like, does that look like it's lining up? There's a few things that could stop you from lining up. Number one, if the holes look like they're shifted in this way, that might mean that the edge of this is a little bit too long, right? So if this was too long and it was like here, then those holes are no longer going to line up. So if it looks like the holes are shifted in this way, you got to cut the end a little bit more or file or grind the end a little bit more. Then the other thing you're looking at is when you push it against this box here, our front box, if you push it against that, if the holes are not lining up because they're shifted too far this way, too far into the robot this way, then this front beam might be too long. Now, if they're off just a tiny bit, that might be like, you should have these still loose enough to where you can wiggle it around, and it should go. So mine looks fine, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get a couple of these bolts going here. Go up from the bottom on that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten that one in first, because that'll help hold it in place for me, if I can. I think this is another situation where probably I would tip it up if you have another person to help hold the robot. All right, that looks good. I think the second one would go as well, so we're pretty happy about that. Oh yeah, no problem. And I'll tighten it in. We do need to get at least 2 on this side. I would probably, with bolts, I would stop at 2 on this side. All right, that is starting but not all the way tight. All right, now the other option is rivets. So we'll look at the other side here with rivets. Let me grab my rivet box. All right, and if you're going to use rivets, these holes are, we measured them, they're like 0.196, right? That is just a little bit over 3/16 of an inch. 3/16 of an inch would be 0.1875. So you're looking for 3/16 rivets. That is the right size rivet for those holes. So if we come over to the other side of our robot here, what we can do is drop our rivets in those holes. Let's see if we're going to line up. Yeah, everything looks like it's going to line up just fine. And with rivets, I would do more of them. And here's the cool part with rivets. Because they don't go out the bottom, when we come and bring in that bottom belly pan, we don't have to undo the bolts in order to make it fit because there's nothing sticking out the bottom of the robot. So you'll need a 3/16 jaws on your riveter as well. This is nice if you have either a pneumatic or electric riveter. I'm going to be doing these all by hand. And there are a few different types of rivets that you can get. You can get different lengths of rivets. You need to get one. It'll give you a grip range, right? And we're going to be going through 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. So if you have about 1/4 of an inch of grip range, that's what you're looking for. So find something that's about 1/4 of an inch, and then you can get all aluminum. That middle section on the rivet is the shank, and this section can be aluminum or it can be steel. I like getting aluminum rivets, so this part here is aluminum, but this part is steel because that squeezes it a little bit tighter. It is harder to squeeze, though, with the tool. You can get it all aluminum. That probably works fine as well. I find that occasionally, though, with those, sometimes you can have a loose hole. And what you want to do when you're riveting is just make sure your riveter is flat down against the rivet. The rivet is sitting flat on the surface. Like you can't feel any edges, anything sticking up on the edges of the rivet. And that's going to give you the best connection. Now, with the steel shank ones, it also does a good job of kind of pulling it flat because it takes that extra force to break it off. All right, and what I'm going to do is actually, because it's rivets, you could go crazy and do all of the holes, and that would be totally fine. I'll probably just do 3 for now. But I think doing all 5 not going to hurt anything. I would do 3, and then when you know you're not going to have to disassemble it later, then maybe you can throw the rest of the rivets in because they don't weigh much, and they're just going to give you some extra strength and extra, in case one breaks or something like that, extra redundancy. All right, so we'll do 3 there, and then on this side, I'm also going to do 3 on this side for rivets. So we'll get kind of all 3 across here. Let's get, the middle one first. All right, and I am holding that bottom box up while I get it started, making sure that stays flush. Now, if you're working by yourself and you can't hold it up and pop the rivet with one hand, you could put a clamp on there, but hopefully you just have a second person that can be holding and riveting. Or you have an electric or pneumatic riveter, in which case the riveting part actually is, easy. All right, let's get this one going. And the last one. All right. Now, we're going to do a quick test here. And this is not the piece that's going to go there. Ultimately, our fuel intake is going to sit inside of here. It needs a surface coming up off of this one to connect to. Now, that surface for the ramp ends up getting really close to this bar. So if I tried to put a T bracket here, or an L bracket, angle bracket here, I wouldn't have room to attach the piece that I want to actually mount my intake to. So we're going to just use basically another piece of box or channel that's going to run all the way along here, and that's going to be our plate holding these two together. We haven't made that yet. We're going to do that in the next video. But so for right now, what we're looking for is just, does it line up, right? Can I get stuff into the holes? You can either drop in rivets or you can drop in bolts just to test. We're not going to tighten them or anything. So this side, it looks like I can get stuff in all of the holes. They're all lining up. Again, if they're not lining up, right, if it feels like the holes are being pushed off in this direction, this piece might be too long. You might have to grind that piece down. Hopefully you would have seen that when we did our test back here. And then if it's wrong inside to outside, that should not be possible because that's all set based on how we attach to two things that should be very accurate. Let's check the other side here. So just line up another plate on the other side, Swerve module. And I'm just going to drop, again, I'm just going to drop some bolts through and make sure, bolts or rivets, whatever you have handy. We just want to make sure these holes are going to be lined up. And I don't know if you saw that, but I had to push this beam. I can still twist this one, right? I had to push it a little bit to get it moved over to the right spot where I'm happy with it. And then Okay, I think this is lined up. I think this is just me not being able to find the bottom hole in the box. Come on now. There we go. And then we can try sort of this last one here as well, just to make sure. But yeah, that is good. So basically, our pieces are all the right length. They're going to square up nicely when we attach that on the top and our belly pan on the bottom to hold it together. So now we can remove those. That was just making sure we had everything where we wanted it. OK, and then we can do one more set of pieces here in the front of the robot. But let me turn this in a way that I can actually reach it. And this thing is quite big compared to the table. All right. So the last thing that we're going to do is we have these sticking 1 inch out the front of the robot. And like I said, that's so that when we put the fuel intake on, the roller and stuff like that is still inside the perimeter, the robot perimeter, or the inside of the frame. But then what that means is when we go to put bumpers on here, we sort of need a continuous piece here that is the backing side of our bumper, or a continuous piece to continue the frame to the edge. So for that, we're going to need our SKB 105s. All right, and these, one side should be 1/2 inch in. That side is going to line up. So the side that maybe has some holes, but basically is a 1/2 inch from the hole to the edge of the piece. The other side was a 1/4 inch. That's going to end up going right inside here, flush on this guy. And that's going to then be the outside, right, the backing of our bumper going to the edge of the frame of the robot. Now to connect these together, we are going to use those straight joiner plates that we talked about earlier. And with these, we are going to potentially have to move them around a little bit later when we get to our bumper mounts. We're going to have to get a bumper mount that sits on top of this plate at some point. So we got to be a little bit careful. Now, I think what we can do is we can, again, either use rivets or bolts. I'm going to use rivets for this one. Maybe I'll use bolts for the other side. All right? But if we lay this across the two that are here, the box and the plate that's here, we're going to basically rivet into that or bolt into that to start holding it into place. Now, if you only have bolts, don't just bolt this in. Don't just get going, because there's going to be another one of these plates on the bottom. So if you're doing bolts for this step, make sure you have both plates there. But I'll show you how to do bolts when we get to the next corner. So let's drop in a second rivet here. Squeeze that in. And this is where things might end up moving is I don't know which holes we can use for the rivets, but I'm going to go in the first hole that lines up. So we're going to be every other hole for a minute here. And we'll start squeezing that down. And then I'll do the last hole for now. And then we'll find out later where the bumpers end up. And if we have to drill out a rivet and put it somewhere else, that's going to be no big deal. All right, the good news is, and I'm going to have to find a way to tip this robot up now, which is like, all right. The good news is when we do the plate on the bottom, this plate is not going to interfere with, well, it might. Never mind. If the bumper is going to have a bolt that goes through one of these holes in order to mount the bumper on. And due to the weather, that shipment did not arrive yet. So I don't 100% know where we're going to put it, but I know we're going to be able to figure it out. And, since you're watching these videos, they're probably all out. You could probably skip ahead and know the answer before me. All right. One in the second box. And then we'll do one in the first hole of this box here. Don't tip the robot over. one in the last hole. Perfect. All right, so that is now in pretty nice and secure. Again, I'm going to leave it up, actually. We will have bumpers coming around this corner as well, right? So this edge here, because it's not attached to anything, it's sort of supported. These plates are sort of supporting it by resting against. Like if you were to get hit here, right, that is pushing right into our Swerve module plate. Same thing on the other side that you can't see, but trust me, or look at your robot. So it's going to give some impact resistance this way, but also we're going to have a bumper here that is attached in front here to this section somewhere, and is going to be attached on the plate on the side of the robot. So that's going to give us a couple points of contact there as well. All right, now we need to do the same thing on the other side, and I did say we would do this side with the bolts. So let me see how much I can slide this over before I run out of space here. So it's hopefully somewhere I can reach. Seems good. All right, so our second 105, all right, is going to go this way. And just like for everything else, I want these bolts to come up from the bottom of the robot, because if they go the other way, right, like I'll show you in a second, this gives us this nice smooth edge. It actually sits below the Swerve chassis, whatever frame piece, the bottom frame piece. So this bolt is not going to be the thing that gets us stuck on the bump. However, right, if we put something in the other direction, all that extra bit that's sticking down, that now is a thing that could drag or scrape or get stuck on stuff. So I really think for this one, you definitely want to make sure that all your bolts are going up from the bottom. And that's why rivets are kind of nice for this too, because rivets, it is always going to give you that nice smooth round, basically a button head-like finish. All right, so we'll do bolts kind of in the same place as we did the rivets. And then take the second plate here and put it on the other side. All right. Okay, so we have plates on both sides. And now we can, just going to go through and finger tighten on a nylock on each one. I should have mentioned this earlier, but again, when we're using the nylocks, we do not need Loctite. The nylock is the locking part, so we do not need both. In fact, I'm not sure what Loctite does to nylon. It might eat away at it, so you might really not want to do it. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and start tightening these in. And like I said, one or maybe two of these might have to move. So I'm still going to tighten them in kind of all the way and be happy with it. All right, seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and tip it back down. Okay. So now we can see kind of how the front is shaping up. This corner, this joint is a little bit weak, right? Until we come back through and we attach something on here. But it's going to get pretty sturdy when we have that attached. We have our kind of bumper supports on the front, the cross member. The last thing that we can attach now is our battery mount plates. You can also wait and do this later. Let's go ahead and attach them now, though, in the video, because we cut them. So these ones, right, we have I think 1/2 inch from either side, but I do have one factory edge. One of these was able to get that coveted end of the piece position. These are going to come off of our back frame. So this is going to be the SKB 26102 is the back frame that we're attaching to, and these are our 109s. And they're going to basically come in like this to attach. Now, in order for us to know where they go, we are going to need a battery. So I think our goal in this robot was to have the battery able to be put in and take out of the robot without needing an extra flap. So in KitBot, the battery sits like this, and there's a flap above it that you move out of the way, and then you can lift the battery up. If we don't do that, right, there's a floor that's really close to the battery, and it's not going to be able to move up very much. But the one advantage that we have is our electronics board, our belly pan, is going to be lower down in the robot than in the original KitBot. So I think there's room for us to mount our battery this way. And this way has some advantages. It keeps the weight lower, so our CG is going to be a little bit lower. It's going to simplify building the hopper later because we don't need that moving piece. And the last thing is, the last thing is a little bit of a negative, and that is we're going to take up more space for this. So it's going to be a little bit more cramped to fit the rest of our electronics in here, but we should be able to do that. All right, so if we take this against the back of the robot, I'm going to take 2 of these plates, and we do have a couple of options here. We might be able to attach these plates with the L's facing out, away from it, or in towards it. Now, this is a bumper question, and again, bumpers, we're waiting on a few pieces to be able to do the final test on that. So there is a chance that these are going to move. I think basically our choice is, if we do this way, we're going to be able to use one singular bumper mount in the middle on the back here. If we mount them this way, then I don't think a whole bumper mount is going to fit on the side. So we basically will cut a bumper mount in half, and we'll have one attachment point on each side. That's going to be a little bit stronger, but a little bit more work. But what I am worried about is if you're taking the battery in and out, especially with the bumpers there, I'm worried that having the extra bumper mount stuff here is going to make it so you can't actually take the battery in and out. And I don't want to have a situation where the only way to change the battery is to take the bumpers off. So I think we should have these facing towards the outside. All right, so if you kind of put the battery in the middle, just eyeball it for now, then we can take these brackets and sort of do our best to line them up. And what you'll find is they don't line up perfectly on holes. It's going to be like one lines up and one doesn't quite line up. And that's okay. We're going to expand out to the next hole. We're going to be a little over 1/2 an inch too wide, and that's okay. And if you do that, and you have room for the battery in between, if I kind of hold these in place, I'm going to move the battery out of the way for a second just so it's not obstructing our field of view. If you look at the holes on the edge here, and that one, of course, is partially obscured, but if you look at the holes from here to the end, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's one invisible hole behind the motor. You'll have to trust me that it's there. On this side, there's only 1, 2, 3 holes. So that's what you should be seeing when you go to attach these. We'll have 4 holes on one side, 3 holes on the other. The battery is going to be a 1/2 inch off center on the robot. Now, again, with these, if you use bolts, you're going to have to come back and remove the bolts later in order to pass a bolt through the belly pan and through everything. So I personally am going to do some rivets on these so that we don't have to worry about that later. In general, too, like rivets are lighter than bolts. They're a little bit weaker, but it's not going to matter in this particular application. So if you are looking at adding a lot more to this robot, like if you're building this, adding the KitBot, and now you're like, okay, now can we make our hopper bigger? Can we make our make a climber or something like that to be attached to this? Then I would suggest doing rivets in a lot of the places where rivets make sense. So basically everywhere except into the Swerve module so far. There is one other place where we're going to have to use bolts, and that is that front bracket that is going to mount the intake. All right, so we got 3 of those there. Let's do the other one. So I'm skipping 1, 2, 3, 4 holes and then attaching this. And what I'm going to do is after I get the couple rivets in to hold it in place, I'm going to bring the battery back and make sure it fits. And if I'm all the way against this one, can I move one closer? And the answer is no, I cannot. Okay, so that is the right spot. Let's rivet that one in. And I'm doing 3 rivets on these, just like we did on the side of the frame. One more. All right, and now these are going to come in and connect to our angle bracket sticking out. So I will continue with the riveting. Right, and this is another one where you might need a clamp, you might need another person helping to hold it. Looks like I was able to get it to pop. And I will do 3 on this side too. Probably 2 would be enough, but. Right, and now let's do the same thing on this side. Now this one, we cut this piece. We tried to make it a 1/2 inch from the edge, from the hole to the edge of the piece. One side of yours might be better than the other. So when you go to line this up, you can see, do those holes line up? Yes or no? If they look a little bit off, try the other side before you get worried. Actually, both of my sides look pretty decent. Now, if they don't line up, right, if it's being pushed too far away, if it's slid like this way and they won't line up, you just got to take it out. You got to file that edge down, grind it down, or make another cut until you can line the holes up. And now we're good, so let's rivet it. Okay, and the third one. Okay, and that is kind of the goal for this video. We have essentially our whole chassis put together. We even have a jump start on our battery mount. We're going to have to come back still and attach the belly pan on the bottom, which is going to make these mounts stronger. It's going to help us with this joint here. It's actually going to make the corner mounts there stronger as well. We got a few more things that we need to do for the battery mount. We'll finish that up as well. Then what? We still got wiring. We still got bumpers. We still got software. We got a long way to go, but this is good progress. We have something that is starting to look like a robot. So we'll see you in the next video, but before we go, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy. First, Cross the Road Electronics, West Coast Products, Aramco, and Team 302, Lake Orion High School for hosting our studio.